Team, I figured I'd come to you tonight and talk to you a little bit about some of the best practices around termination of an employee. Unfortunately, it's the worst case scenario. It's the nightmare scenario for any manager or leader within any organization. And unfortunately, I've been part of many of them throughout my 17-year journey. And my commitment to you is to bring all the experiences, failures, successes, lessons, regrets, mistakes, etc. I want to talk to you tonight about some of the best practices, and actually not all of them relate to the moment in time where you're executing or fulfilling the termination. It is all of the steps or lack thereof leading up to the point where you have to make that decision and ultimately look another human being in the face and tell them, unfortunately, that check's not going to be there in 2 weeks. I know you have a family. I know you have personal situations that you've been encountering and overcoming, and I know you've worked extremely hard. Unfortunately, it wasn't good enough, and this is the decision that is made. So here's the thing, team. I'm not here to be one of those people to convince you that it gets easier with time, because it doesn't. I don't care what anybody tells you. The only thing that gets easier is the preparation and you having the ability to sleep at night because of the steps that you took to ensure that you left everything on the table from a developmental perspective, from an open, honest, transparent communication style. There was no surprises. You gave the employee every opportunity to course correct the behavior or performance, and unfortunately they still were unable to meet the expectation. That gets easier because through experience you build confidence. With confidence, you have the ability to fulfill your responsibility as a manager or a leader. But what does not get easier is looking another human being in the face and saying, unfortunately, we are terminating our relationship effective immediately. Because listen, if you're a stand-up leader, priority number one is the people. And if you're a leader that actually cares about the people that report to you, you've made a conscious effort to understand these people, build relationships with these people and perhaps their family. These aren't strangers that we pull into a room on the first floor and we terminate employment with. These are individuals that we have deep understanding of their personal situation, of their medical situation, of their family situation, finance. We know a lot about these folks. And these folks, in most cases, worked extremely hard for us for a long duration of time, and they're putting their best foot forward and they're still not meeting expectations. And as a leader, you have to make the tough decisions, and you have to lead not only the troops through adversity in the workplace, but you also have to lead the tough decisions. Terminating somebody's ability to continuously provide food for their family is one of the hardest that you'll ever encounter as a leader, but it is part of your job. It is also the number one deterrent for most people wanting to join a leadership or a manager role within their organization. So tip number one, the relationship starts immediately. What I mean by that, for you to sleep good at night after having to make such a tough decision, or at least the only way that I have found success in sleeping after these decisions, is if I've provided above and beyond, invested time, focused on development, and giving the employee every opportunity to continue to develop their skill set to meet the objectives or deliver the performance that the organization expects. That's whiteboarding, that's conversating, that's weekend calls, that is every single lesson, skill, perspective, philosophy. Leave it on the table. They deserve to get everything you have to offer. That's leadership. Lead them through. Do not just hit them on the head and say, go figure it out. So number one, you must, in retrospect, with confidence, know that you left everything on the table. You gave them everything you had, and unfortunately they didn't make it. Number two, open, clear, transparent communication regularly. They should know exactly where they stand, where their areas of opportunity and strengths reside, what specific expectations you have of them, what targets they must deliver, what does success look like, etc. The number two is where a lot of people fail, team. A lot of people struggle with difficult conversation, let alone the termination. People struggle to identify the flaws or areas of opportunity within employees. Better yet, they don't have trouble identifying them. They have trouble building enough courage and confidence to sit that individual down and have that open, honest conversation, because it's awkward for both of you. But I promise you, you're doing your employee a massive disservice if you're not open, honest, transparent very regularly about where they stand. And then lastly, it's clear documentation. So you can recall when the decision comes and you are accountable to make the tough decision to inevitably, let's face it, take food off somebody's table. That's what you're doing. Whether, depending on your organization and expectation, whether you are tracked deliverable dates dates, project deadlines, output, outcome, production-based roles, performance scorecards, competency-based models. Before you make a final decision, you want to have clear documentation that you can stare at objectively and say, I left it all on the table. I gave them every piece of development, skill set, perspective, and philosophy that I have. I was open, honest, transparent very regularly, and I have clear documentation of not only our coaching conversations and development that we work together on, but I also have objectively the outcomes that said employee was unable to accomplish over a certain duration of time. With those three things and those three things at a minimum, you should feel good personally about the level of effort that you put in before you made the decision. Like I said before, that doesn't make looking this person in the face any easier, but the opposite of the best practices that I just gave to you is a leader that shows up and terminates an employee without taking a conscious above and beyond approach to giving the individual the skill sets and the feedback and the open, honest, no surprise communication. They don't deserve to sleep good at night. When you're making a decision to take food off of somebody's table, if you call yourself a leader and you haven't given this employee every opportunity to course correct the behavior or performance, furthermore, you haven't taken a vested interest in personally helping them acquire the skills necessary to meet the objectives, and then you fluffed up the conversation to avoid the awkward, straightforward, transparent conversation around performance. So now the employee is like, I know I'm not doing fantastic, but they have no clue that you're going to drop the hammer here in a few weeks. You should feel ashamed of yourself, and you deserve to lose sleep if you've taken that approach. I'm not saying you're a terrible person. You may not have known any better. Subscribe. I hope to close all those gaps. And listen, the lessons you don't forget, you learn the hard way. And the only reason I have the confidence and the authority to speak on this camera about this subject is because I learned the hard way. Talk about loss of sleep, talk about regret, talk about thinking about kids and the family and the transportation, and did they get a repo, and can they make it to work? What could I have done to save their job? I should have given them XYZ skills. I should have sent the performance report more often. I should have seen the behavior earlier. You don't want that regret. Trust me, the regret when you haven't fulfilled everything I mentioned on this video is much worse than the conversation that you're going to have that's a bit awkward and straightforward around here's where you stand, and if it doesn't improve, unfortunately, this likely is not a long-term relationship that will carry on. Give them everything you have, and if you're unwilling to do that, resign. Go find a single contributor role. If you are a leader, you're responsible for other people, and not only other people, but you're responsible for other people's families. And if you don't have the courage, will, or desire to actually help people, and perhaps you're just in the leadership role for the title, the money, and the authority, get the hell out of that role and give somebody that actually prioritizes people the opportunity to lead the people. And you can go lead process or some single contributor role where your outcomes are solely impacted individually. Until we chat next time, cheers.